So, I'm a bit short of video content at this time of year because I've made so many videos. I tend to just start repeating myself endlessly as we go through winter because there's not a lot of things to talk about. So I thought I would do a sort of ask me anything thing. So if you want to ask questions on any topic, really, it doesn't really bother me very much, and if it does bother me, I'll answer it. But yeah, quite happy to answer personal questions about my history, questions about my lifestyle, questions about gardening on any topic really, apart from growing flowers, which I don't do. But I'll answer questions about why I don't grow flowers, whatever you want to know really, and I'll do my best to answer them. I thought I would answer a couple of questions in this video, sort of frequently asked questions. So the first one probably is, why do I wear shorts all the time? I live a pretty active lifestyle, and my gardening tends to be like an hour a day or something like that. So I tend to be cycling or hiking or swimming, or gardening or playing with the kids, grandkids. So that's kind of pretty much the way I live my life. And what I find is that shorts are just the easiest thing to wear for all those different activities, because it tends to get a bit hot when I'm cycling if I'm not wearing shorts, even at this time of year really, unless it's like really cold, and then I don't tend to be cycling. Tend to get my trousers all mucky if I come on the allotment, but it's really easy with bare legs because I can just kneel on the ground, just wipe them down, and not walking around with dirty trousers all the time. Same with hiking, I don't tend to get mud splashes all up my legs if I'm hiking, but again, with bare legs, just get a cloth and just wipe it down. Then the real big benefits, though, apart from just like it just fits in with my lifestyle, is that I don't seem to metabolize vitamin D that I ingest. The only way I can get vitamin D is through sunlight. Obviously, I'm not getting any at this time of year, but so I'm just in the habit, really, in spring and summer and autumn of getting all my vitamin D that way. I am trying a really sort of high dose vitamin D supplement to see if I can actually metabolize it when I'm getting a really big dose of it, so 20,000 IU or something like that. But blood tests that I've had repeatedly over many years basically show that if I don't do this, then my vitamin D levels are just like absolutely minimum, like almost zero. So that's a big reason. At this time of year, what I'm finding is that I just feel so much more sort of like energized and healthy when I'm getting sunlight on my legs. I'm putting that down to nitric oxide being released by sunlight hitting the skin. And nitric oxide, when it's released into the blood, has all sorts of benefits in terms of your metabolism and things like that. So that's why I wear shorts. And I just like it. I just like the feeling and the sort of freedom of it as well. So let me just think of another common question. Slugs, snails. So yeah, how do I cope with those? So it's a multi sort of faceted strategy. Now, if I was starting from scratch, no, not if I was starting from scratch, because I think on an allotment, you're just going to have slug and snail problems, kind of full stop, because you've got loads of containers, loads of bits of wood, compost bins, adjacent plots with sort of wild areas on them, IBC tanks, all sorts of slug habitats that you really can't get rid of. It's just the nature of having an allotment plot. If I had a farm, then just bare ground would be ideal, with no buildings and no containers and no, rocks on the ground or bits of wood or anything like that. Just bare ground would be ideal, but I don't. And so I know I'm going to have slugs around. So what do? First thing is, where I know that I'm going to have slugs coming onto the plot from adjacent sort of wild areas, I tend to try and plant things that are not susceptible to slug damage. So things like Brussels sprouts, climbing squash plants, kale, brassicas in general that grow big. So purple sprout broccoli, things like that. they're going to be pretty resistant to slugs. So I tend to put those around the edge, as well as that's where I put my fruit trees and things. Garlic and things like that, elephant garlic, even beetroot, pretty resistant to slugs. So those are the sorts of things I put down around the periphery of my plot. Second thing, I do have wooden sided coal frames and raised beds, and I have wood paths, wood chip paths. Now these are not a preventative to slugs, but they are a discouragement to them, a slight discouragement to them. So I do find that where I've got a bed that's sort of not raised, I do have more slug problems than where the slugs have kind of got to find their way across a wood path and then up the side of a bed and then down it again and then into the bed. That just seems to be a little bit of a deterrent. I also put down now, over the last 2 years, in spring, late spring, I'll lay down a layer of strulch. Either last year's strulch or the year before's strulch or this year's strulch. What I tend to do is try to use previous years, which I've bagged up, and then I'll just put a sprinkling of fresh strulch on top. So strulch is chopped straw. It's got an iron compound, it's impregnated with iron. It won't be iron, it'll be some compound of iron, but I don't know which one it is. I don't think they actually tell you either. I think it's probably proprietary, secret. But the straw, this impregnated straw, chopped straw, is really good for retaining the water, and it does discourage slugs. So it doesn't kill them or anything like that. They just don't like the feeling of this iron compound, whatever it is, when it comes into contact with them. And that feeling is associated then, let me just wait for this plane to go over. Yeah, so this uncomfortable feeling they associate then with the smell of the strulch, which is actually quite strong. And so it's that combination, you know, so then they sort of depart and then they won't come back again because they can smell the strulch, they know they don't like that, so they tend to stay away. So that's been really great, and I've used that for all of my pepper beds and all of my melon beds. And the nice thing about that is that then when I clear those beds, they're pretty much then clear of slugs, and they're the beds that I'm planting spinach and lettuce and things like that into in autumn. So I tend to get zero slug and snail problems in autumn, which is a real benefit. And obviously in summer I don't get any issues because that's when the strulch is down. So yeah, and I water with the Nemesis slug nematode, which does kill the slugs, and it kills them underground. So I'll water that in spring, and in autumn on the beds where I haven't used strulch. So that seems to be fairly effective. So that's pretty good for things like the carrot beds and lettuce beds in summer, spring and summer, where I'm not using strulch. Well, I don't use strulch on lettuce beds, as I say. I only use it on the melon and the pepper beds. Right, so that is pretty much it, other than that I will leave some of my lettuces to sort of heart up, and then I dispose of them in the compost, and the slugs and snails tend to sort of migrate out of the beds into the lettuce hearts, and this will be sort of towards the end of spring, for example. And that's a great way of clearing a bed, because they really like sort of coming out the sides of the boards of the raised bed and things like that, migrating into like lettuces and then getting put into the compost. And then they don't like the compost because it's a bit too warm for them, so they all come up to the top, and then on the underside of the tarp that I use to cover the compost, you find loads of slugs underneath there where they've come out of the lettuces or anything else, any other debris that you've put in there, and I just snip them with scissors because I think that's the fastest and most humane way to kill them. So that is it for slugs and snails. So then I was thinking of one more frequently asked question. Oh, let's just deal with the organised thing. So people say, oh, I'd love to do what you do, but I'm just not as organised. And it always makes me laugh, this comment, because I am not. I'm just not at all organised. I hate being organised. You know, all through my working life, I had people to organise me. You know, I had PAs, I had program managers and project managers and people like that. You know, all loads of people trying to keep me organised. You know, and obviously I wasn't very organised, so they were having to do like all the organising for me. And once I sort of retired, I had to sort of figure out how to organise myself. You know, and I didn't like it because I'm just naturally not a very organised person. I'm sort of the sort of person who just likes to, I'm a real freedom junkie. I just like to sort of wake up in the morning and think, what's the best thing I can do today? Look at the weather and look at how I'm feeling and things, and just decide like what to do. So the idea of doing anything on a schedule or anything like that, it's just anathema to me. That's not me. So how do I cope, really? Well, the first thing is I just develop systems that organise me. So I have my Airtable database, which is freely available. You can find a link to that in the description below. And that just tells me what to do, basically, each week. And sometime during that week, I'll get around to doing it. I don't tend to do things on the day that I've scheduled to do them, but I get round to doing them sometime during the week, and it's generally when it's raining. So if it's not raining, I tend to be a bit behind on my gardening schedule. And I produce a weekly newsletter for you guys, steverichards.substack.com, and again there's a link to that down below. And so that forces me to spend an hour or so in Caffè Nero in the morning. I tend to go to Caffè Nero in the morning. I've got 3 Caffè Neros around us on the seafronts. So when I'm sort of cycling or hiking or whatever in the local area, I just go to one of those. I just plonk myself down and I write that newsletter. And in that newsletter, I'm writing about everything that I've done this week and everything that I'm planning to do next week and all the other kind of organisational considerations. So that gets my sort of mind for an hour a week into organisation mode. And then hopefully we'll have a few rainy days in winter. We haven't really had that many this year so far. And so those few rainy days have just been sort of focused on housework or getting the house ready for Christmas or whatever. But hopefully we'll have 2 or 3 rainy days when I'll really get stuck into planning, and I'll spend 2 or 3 hours, so 2 or 3 days, maybe a couple of hours each day, really thinking about what went well this year and what I want to do and try and achieve next year. And that is pretty much it. That's kind of my strategy for organising. I've written about it and I've done a video about it as well. If I think about it, if I get around to it, so I'm not very organised, I'll put links to these things down in the description. But there's a chapter in my ebook as well that talks about it. But I do tend to, I appear more organised than I am because you see on video me talking about those few short periods of time during the week when I actually get around to organising myself. And what you don't see is the other, 99% of the week when I'm not sort of organised at all and just sort of freewheeling through the day. So that's pretty good. But I'm also very keen on this whole 80-20 thing where I really concentrate on the 20% of activities that yield the 80% of results. And maybe I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in another video. So if you've got any more questions, please ask them in the description down below. And if you don't want to, in the comments down below. If you don't want to do that, just email me or comment on my newsletter or whatever where you want to sort of leave questions. That's fine with me. So I think I'll close now. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'm going to get on with some planting. See you soon.